Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by another awesome progressive candidate from the great state of Wisconsin, Michael Beardsley. How you doing, Michael?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Yesterday I had Tiffany Brault on from the Fond du Lac City Council race, and go check out that episode. I found you guys through our Wisconsin Revolution endorsement, and you're running for City Council in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And you've made it through your primary. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And the general election is April 6th. And I'll pull up your website and I'll ask people to donate and volunteer. It's beardsleyforoshkosh.com. We'll get to all of that. First question is, what inspired you to run? What animated you politically? And then what inspired you to run?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And I did watch the episode yesterday. That was fun to see. Since Fond du Lac's very close to Oshkosh, so that was cool. Yeah. So what inspired me to run? So I did run for Congress last year as well, which is a whole story in itself. But really before that, I got pulled into politics around 2015, 2016-ish because of Bernie. I think a lot of people my age kind of fall into the same boat. And I'm looking at my ballots, I'm looking at who's running in my area and not really getting excited or feeling like there's anyone that really represents what I want to see in a candidate, whether that's Medicare for all, climate policies, things like that. So that's really why I decided to do that race, because I saw an opportunity to really make a difference. And I thought it was important to keep that momentum going, especially at the local level where I think I can make a positive difference here. So that's really why I decided to jump into this race for Oshkosh City Council.
Awesome. So it was Wisconsin 6th was your house race, right? And you said that's a whole story. Do you want to share? Like what was that experience like? What'd you learn?
Sure. Yeah. 6th district, correct. So the current representative is Glenn Grothman. He's been in office for this is his 4th term, I believe. But Republicans held that seat for forever, since the 60s, I believe. So it was already a long shot in that regard. And I joined the race last February, so right before COVID. So that was my first time running for office, right before COVID hit. Just had a lot of learning curves where I was doing everything for the first time, so I didn't really know what to do here and there. So that was very tough. And there's 3 other candidates running, so I made it a crowded field of 4. And but again, I was running on Medicare for all, Green New Deal were kind of the 2 cornerstones of the campaign, because that's what I wasn't seeing in the field. And I ended up taking 2nd out of 3 that were on the ballot, so I can take some positivity out of it. It was a distant 2nd, so the candidate that went on to the general is a very strong candidate, favorite all along. So but I'm glad I did it. So it opened up a lot of doors. Like our Wisconsin Revolution, met a lot of great people there, and I'm working with them today. And it's kind of kept my spark going. So awesome. It was a huge learning curve, but yeah, glad I did it.
Yeah, and you probably abruptly had to learn how to campaign without door knocking or shaking hands and so forth.
Yes, yeah, it was all virtual, which I thought was an advantage, but it really shows how important door knocking is. I didn't have time to do that. Other candidates did, and I think that's a huge difference. If I take anything from COVID, it's face-to-face interaction is the way to win.
Right. If you had to convey the most valuable lesson learned to someone who's watching this, who's considering a run, what should they know in advance that you wish you knew in advance?
This might sound a little general, but I wish I grew my base more with organizations and other, I guess I would say, key players in the area, whether that's leaders of the local Democratic parties or whatever ticket you're running under. Because I really came out of nowhere. So I was trying to build all that up while I was running. Now I'm kind of doing that work backwards now, building that base for this run, which is going much better. And it's working. So yeah, get involved with organizations is the big one, whether you plan to run or not, to be honest, but that's going to help you in the future.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, show up at the local committees and all that stuff. Yep, it matters. That's why a lot of the candidates like Cori Bush and so forth win on the second run, because they've built, it takes a longer runway and they've built some identity and so forth. So yeah, that's great. So now you're running for City Council of Oshkosh. Like I said, the general election is April 6th. You're through the primary. Let me pull up your website before we get too much further. It's Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. And I was joking with you before we went live. I love the very subtle, it's awesome. And I love this graphic up here of Michigan is fantastic. And this one is also fantastic. I was torn which one to use, but it's Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. You're a grassroots campaign. You don't have like giant checks coming in from Raytheon or whomever. So, donate. You can volunteer here. You have mechanisms for people to volunteer as well.
I do, yes. So we will be doing phone banks, and I'll be doing non-contact literature drops starting in a few weeks. So there's plenty of opportunity if you're local, or if not, if you want a phone bank, that is an opportunity too.
Excellent. And races like this, I mentioned it yesterday with Tiffany, like it can be swung by, a few dozen votes or 100 votes. I didn't look at the turnout or the numbers in Oshkosh, but, it's, I imagine that's true, right?
Yeah. I can give a quick recap of the primary. So there was only 4,000 people that voted in the primary, which is about 10-11% of Oshkosh's registered voters. So it's very low turnout, which we need to get up for the general. And so the difference between, so the top 6 advanced, the difference between those were only a few hundred votes. I think from first to last was about 400 votes only. So very slim margins.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So that, anyone watching anywhere, phone bank from anywhere, like it makes a difference. You can, everyone was like all in on races like Jamie Harrison and stuff, but like there are races like Michael's that can really just be swung by just a little bit of elbow grease, if you will, So, if you were inspired by Bernie and disappointed in how that turned out, like the battle didn't end, right? So there are people like Michael that could use our phone banking time, and sweat equity, if you will. I want to ask a thing about your platform. You have, obviously Bernie guy, you said, House race, Medicare for all, Green New Deal. I'm assuming you check all the boxes as far as the progressive goes, right? But the way you frame it on your website, you call it a high level vision, and there's 3 sort of planks of that. And I'd like to prompt you and just have you go through those, right? So, what that means to you and how you would implement that on Oshkosh City Council, right? So first one is sustainability. Talk about that.
Yeah, sustainability is kind of my passion point, I would say. So it's kind of the main thing I'm running on. And this race is nonpartisan. And at the city level, we're very limited on what we can and can't do legally, whether that's dealing with federal or state laws. So we have to kind of find our niche.
Right.
So luckily there's a lot of things with sustainability that we can and should do on the city level. The big hitters are, first thing I would love to do is have the city itself commit to renewable energy usage 100% by 2050. That's in line with really every expert and even Biden's plan and things like that. And talking with other environmental activists, that's kind of the first thing cities should do. So Oshkosh needs to do that. And then there's a whole host of other things we can do with private-public partnerships to kind of make solar more affordable for households, allowing on-bill financing so that they can stretch that out over time instead of paying it all up front. And even the creation of a sustainability coordinator, which I think all major cities should have. Oshkosh doesn't currently. So those are kind of the 3 big ones that I want to really go after. But as you can see on my website, I have probably 20-30 more bullet points of things we could do.
Yeah. So definitely go check that out. Again, Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. I have no shame in plugging your website a million times. So awesome. Second one is equity. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, this one's really a mix of things that kind of all tie together one way or the other. But the 2 I kind of group together are some decriminalization efforts, where I think we should decriminalize marijuana possession in the city. It's not legal anyway in Wisconsin right now, but we have the ability to remove the fines at the city level. So if you have a marijuana possession, you no longer would have to pay a $200 fine at the low end. And in that same boat, there's homelessness attacks, I kind of call it. So if you fall, or if you sleep or park in a public park overnight in Oshkosh, you face a $200 fine at minimum. And really, it's just that's for homeless people that they get slapped with a fine, no one helps them, and it just kind of makes the problem worse.
Yeah,
so those are
criminalizing poverty. Right.
Exactly. And there's 2 warming shelters in the city, which also is not enough. And either they don't get there in time and they can't get in for the night. So they're in the cold, and they're at risk of a fine that they can't afford, or they're just, the warming shelters are full and they have nowhere to go. So it's a big issue.
Yeah.
Then a couple other things. So I'm really big on this network that nowhere in Wisconsin is done yet, but there's a nationwide network of cities that have implemented universal childcare services, and I want to see Oshkosh put that in the city budget, because that's really one of the main tools that the city council have is the budget. So I want to see some big investments in there to start out having 30-40% of the population be able to access childcare for subsidized for free, and with a vision of making that fully universal. So that's kind of the big one I would like to see happen.
Awesome. Yeah. And, just, I mean, we talk about that just as a talking point, but, in talking to constituents and going out and earning votes, right? That third one, particularly, talk about what you've heard. Like, how would that change materially someone's life?
Yeah. Well, if someone can't afford childcare or they don't have access to it, that's going to fall on. It's typically falling on the woman of the household to either not work or get a second job or something like that to figure out how to make it work. That's just how it's been. That's the unfortunate reality. So right off the bat, affordable childcare is gonna free them up to do what they want in life, or just free them up to live a more comfortable life, which is really the goal. And also it would allow for more businesses to open to take in these to take in more children for childcare. So it's kind of an economic opportunity as well as a family opportunity.
Yeah, that's excellent. Kind of going back to the sustainability thing, are there ways that climate change is rearing its ugly head in Oshkosh that you want to talk about? Like, what's it look like there?
Yeah. So if you look at Oshkosh on a map, we are right on Lake Winnebago, which is a large lake. It's not a great lake, but it's the biggest in Wisconsin. Besides that,
A pretty good one.
yeah, and it's also right next to a river that feeds into the lake, so we're kind of sandwiched in there. And Oshkosh has always been it's not technically a swamp, but it's been a wet area because of this. And climate change has shown that there's been more unpredictable weather, more rainfall, the slow rise of the water levels, which is a big danger to especially the historic part of Oshkosh, which is, like, my house is over 100 years old, and it's just known to have water issues in basements around Oshkosh, and that's gonna amplify and accelerate with climate change. Not having a plan to kind of be resilient towards floods. There's really nothing being done right now for that. So that's another point on my sustainability page. But it's really, the main issue is going to be flooding. So we want to be able to tackle that head on.
Awesome. I didn't ask you to brag on your city. I generally do that. Let me pull up the map here real quick. So tell me about Oshkosh. Tell me what's awesome about it. Were you born and raised there? Tell me what's great about it.
Sure. So I was actually raised in Freedom, Wisconsin, which is about 40 minutes drive north. So not too far away. So I came to Oshkosh about 9 years or so ago to attend UW Oshkosh, which is I believe the third largest public university in Wisconsin behind Madison and Milwaukee. So we have a sizable student population in the city. So that's how I came here, and I ended up staying because I love the city. And so I guess Oshkosh in general, as you can see, yep, there's the lake and the river. It's home to Oshkosh Corporation. You might know it from Oshkosh B'gosh, which no longer is headquartered here, but there's a lot of other large manufacturing companies here. And Wisconsin in general is one of the larger manufacturing states. So there's a lot of manufacturing going on. Is that actually, quick plug for Oshkosh Corporation, just announced today that they want to contract with USPS to build the next generation of fleet for them, which is big news for the company in the city, because they are also the city's largest employer.
Excellent.
But yeah.
Excellent. So when you mentioned about flooding and stuff, is it because of this river that runs through, basically? Is that low land?
Yes. Yep. And along the lake there too, on the right side, it's all, and that's that, I guess the north part of town, we'll call it, north of the river and next to the lake is the historic center. That's where downtown is. That's where all the old housing is. So that's the most at-risk area.
Okay, great. Cool. So while I'm here, Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. Sign up to volunteer, share this video, go like Michael's socials, share his socials. It goes a long way when we keep telling the story. You know what I mean? I always encourage people to do that. So, so the third thing on your high level vision. So we have sustainability, equity, and we can kind of go back to those if you like. And then the third one is you call it future economy. Describe that if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So, kind of the overarching theme of my campaign is to be future forward, and being proactive with things instead of reacting. It's a progressivism in general. But I want to take I called that out specifically because I think Oshkosh could be and should be a green city that also, like I mentioned, we have a lot of manufacturing here. I want to see the city be the green business city in the state. Whether that's partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to have a green incubator program to bring companies here, or retrofitting businesses already to be more renewable, and things like basic income pilots that's happening around the state and around the country. I think that would be something to look and do here too as well, because automation's coming. We got to be prepared for the future.
Right on. Yeah, especially during a pandemic, right? There's, it's criminal that we don't have any sort of UBI going on. Um, you know, uh, Let me ask a little bit about like COVID. Well, I guess you two things. Let me before I get to COVID. You know, Tiffany described. She's in a conservative area yesterday in Fond du Lac. I'm assuming Oshkosh is a conservative. Is it a red district? The incumbent is a Republican in the House seat, like you said. How is your message landing, and like how you know obviously it's righteous policy, right? So the obstacle really is overcoming propaganda and stuff like that. Like how are you finding campaigning and landing messages with within the constituents in your conservative area?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Oshkosh is a little less conservative, I would say, than Fond du Lac. Fond du Lac's kind of known for that, but Oshkosh is more of like a true 50-50, kind of like the state of Wisconsin is. So it's a good kind of microcosm of, if you want to pick a city to see how the state's going to go, it's probably going to be Oshkosh, or the region in general. But so it's been tough. There's some things that land that I would think never would land, like a Green New Deal or things like that, that are very sustainability focused with conservative people, because they just get the vision that yes, they see it happening, and this is something we need to tackle for the future. And there's other things that are just hard to sell. Healthcare stuff is hard to sell with conservatives for some reason. I just come across that with my conservative and or with my Congress race. Unfortunately, healthcare stuff is not very relevant to the local office, so it hasn't been a key message this go around. But otherwise, it's honestly just a true toss-up. It's a Midwestern city, so everyone's just kind of very realist, and spending a lot of money is hard to sell. So I'm looking at this with a vision of doing a lot of things, but I also need to sell. We can't just spend or raise taxes. We need to pull from somewhere else. So where does that come from? So that's a hard path to navigate, but that's the reality of it.
Right. Yeah, and something like universal childcare, even at a local level, that goes against. I heard Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland talking about this recently. They were talking about how sexism is sort of inherent in some of those things, right? So, conservative views might want the woman to stay at home, the mother to stay at home, right? So, that's one of the reasons built into why they would push back on something like that. And their point, they even said it extends to pedophilia. Like if the kids were at home and they were safe with mom, then they wouldn't be out there and at risk, from whatever, right? And it's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, I imagine you're going to bump up against that in terms of universal childcare, because the views, the patriarchal views of the conservatives base, is going to be at odds with that, right? Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
I'll add the childcare one has been the hardest one to sell, because there's just not really a lot to work off of. There's not a lot you can point at and be like, it was done here, this is how we're going to do it. It's kind of starting from scratch. It's a hard sell to have people kind of envision like, oh yeah, we can make this happen. We can provide childcare for free. It's just not been a thing. So it's hard to get people to imagine that.
Yeah. Versus, like you said, sustainability, when they see the flooding, it doesn't matter. It's, it's flooding for all of us, right? So that, that's easier to probably communicate, I would think.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And COVID, right? So let's talk about COVID. What does that look like in your town? How is it trending? What's the response been? What could you do on city council to remediate it?
Yeah, it's been trending down, which is good. I would say numbers wise, it's been about average with the rest of the country with how it's gone. So, um, the city council, the most well, they did what I would have done if I was on council at the time. They had a mask mandate when the state didn't, and then when the state did, they had one anyways as a backup if the state were to repeal it. And that's actually tonight they're having another vote, the same type of thing, if the mask mandate is needed or not, because there's talk again of repealing at the state level. So there's that whole dynamic going on. So I would obviously be in favor of a mask mandate. That's really, unfortunately, a lot of what this council has been able to do. Otherwise, it's been partnering with the county to make sure that the health officials are getting the vaccine out, which Wisconsin has done very well at, and Oshkosh has been in line with that. I believe we're fourth in the country with vaccine rollout. So.
Right.
It's been a while to be able to say we're doing good things with COVID, so it's kind of exciting.
Here, here. Yeah, and I imagine this is a universal theme that small businesses are hit. As I looked at your map, I imagine there's some sort of waterline touristy areas and so forth, right? I imagine downtown area, like you mentioned. Talk about how businesses have been hit, and what, if anything, you could do from the city council.
Yeah, that's a great point that I wanted to bring up. So thank you. So Oshkosh also has a lot of huge events. They have EAA Air Venture, which is a global. It's the airplane event. Thousands of people fly in every year for it. Didn't have it last year. That's a huge revenue for the city. They also have a lot of concerts, a lot of water activities, things like that. So hit the nail on the head there, where we've put a pause on all of that. So it's the next step forward, and how do we allow that to happen again? Sorry, how do we not allow that to happen again? Because I don't know if the vaccine's going to be rolled out in time. So what we can do on the city council level, push the vaccines, get them on as soon as possible, but also I think there's some financial incentives we should be providing for this entertainment business, because it's really what brings a lot of money into the city. And if we don't let those flourish, maybe help them out for a year or two, then we're going to be hurt longer down the road. So we need to maybe take a couple hits on the budget for the year or two to kind of lower some taxes, things like that. It's kind of the main avenue we can take with that, really.
Yeah, here. Well said. So I'll just mention again, Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. General election is April 6th, and that's statewide. And I kept talking yesterday to Tiffany about her slate. I meant there's other candidates in other cities, right? So our Wisconsin Revolution endorsed quite a few candidates, all great ones, and yourself included. So April 6th is the election day for that. Anything else, like policy wise, platform wise, that you want to get out there? I could talk to you about policies, and I'd love to have you back on when you're on the council and so forth. But for today, is there anything else that you want to focus on in your campaign or policies?
Honestly, we hit all the main policies I want to talk about. So so it flowed real well. I'll just highlight that. So I'm not taking donations for that campaign. I'm trying to focus on the community and just getting out the vote. So phone banking is going to be a huge help. So I'll just plug that again. If anyone out there listening wants to help out, phone banking is going to make a huge difference. And I do have a donate link. You can donate to local charities. The city needs it, so it'd be very much appreciated.
Cool. So that's what that's donate forward up here on the top right. That means it goes to other charities that you're supporting.
Correct. Yep. I listed about 4 or 5 of them. I mean, there's a ton I could have picked, but I picked the ones that I thought would be most crucial during COVID. So yeah, trying to pay it forward.
That's excellent. So I mean, maybe so who's is there an incumbent directly in the seat that you're running for?
Yes and no. Yeah, I guess I could talk about kind of how the election is going to work. So there's 6 council seats total, and then this year there are 3 up for re-election. So there's 1 incumbent running again, 2 that aren't. So there's essentially 2 open seats.
Okay.
So we're down to 6 candidates running. Myself, Latiria Garrett, I'll shout out. She was also endorsed by our Wisconsin Revolution.
Yeah.
But they're the other 4 candidates are all great, solid candidates. So I honestly don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a toss up. So yeah.
I'll just say they're all terrible. That's not you talking. Vote for Michael and Letitia, right? I'm not sure if I got her name. What was her name again? Is it
Lateria?
Lateria Garrett, right? Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, vote for Lateria and Michael. And the other, I'm sure they're great, lovely people, but they're not on my show right now. So awesome. So I wanted to highlight that because you said you earlier were animated in part by Bernie's, not taking corporate PACs and stuff like that, right? And boy, that is a real way to put your money where your mouth is, literally, right? You're not taking donations, you're forwarding any donations to charities in need at this time, because of COVID repercussions and so forth. Who better do you want to serve on the Oshkosh City Council than someone that's willing to do that rather than take donations and so forth, right? So, kudos to you. That's a good move. Very nice, and an authentic one. I'm not. I don't mean moved in any way. It was disingenuous, but indicative of the quality and like I said, your motivations and so forth. So, excellent. So again, it's Beardsley for Oshkosh.com. April 6th is the election. Share this video. Go like Michael's socials. Go follow him on Twitter. Share his stories. Keep telling the story. If you know anybody that's in Wisconsin, send them this video. Send them Michael's link. Volunteer to phone bank. Just a couple of dozen or 100 votes can flip this seat, and then who knows where Michael goes? Maybe runs for the House again, and we get another progressive in Congress, right? So, we got to keep building the bench, at all levels. So, I appreciate you. Running for the House and not getting discouraged and then finding another opportunity and pursuing that. That takes a lot of, wherewithal. So, kudos for that. Anything else you want to hit on before we go?
No, those were all very nice words. So thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. You're doing great work. It's cool to see everybody you have on, and I'm honored to be part of it. So thank you again.
Likewise. Thank you, sir. Good luck. And when you come back on, I will call you Councilman Beardsley. If there's ever any news in your area, feel free to ping me. You have my number. And let's stay in touch, man. I'm watching your race. Godspeed on April 6th.
Awesome. Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
You too.